Hello degenerates and welcome back to another vlog style video. Today we're actually going to be talking about something that a lot of you guys actually might be interested in, which is going to be learning Japanese. So to briefly talk about this, I am by no means fluent in the language at all. To become fluent in this language is extremely tough, especially coming from English. You might have heard me talk a little bit about this in some of my Smash Stories videos where I kind of go into the whole aspect of me communicating with the Japanese players and all that stuff. But here today, I want to go a little bit more in depth about the language and the things that you can do for yourself to help learn the language to be a little bit easier for you. Just for anybody that's unfamiliar with my background or you guys haven't gone through my Smash Stories, one of the big things with my life is that I work a lot with the Japanese Smash players, in particular the Duck Hunt players is the one that I have a long history of working with, and more recently I've come into contact with the Japanese K-Rule players. So, while we can't really do much now, I do hope to work a lot more with them in the future. And basically, because I wanted to interact more with the international community, at least the players in Japan and all that stuff, I really wanted to learn the language. Not to mention that, I am very interested in Japanese culture, and in some part of my life, I would like to live there for a little bit. In fact, I am actually planning on applying to the JET program when that does go live this year. If you guys haven't heard of that, if you ever heard of anybody going to Japan to teach English, that's basically what that is. Um, but yeah, so because of those things, my interest in anime, manga, video games, all that other stuff, I've always wanted to learn the language so I could just kind of understand more of what they're saying and just more of the intricacies of everything that goes into it. So if you are a native English speaker like me, Japanese is a very weird, obtuse language to learn. Basically the sentence structures that they have and the way that like formal Japanese is spoken compared to like casual Japanese, it's very different. However, understanding casual Japanese will really help you learn more to at least speak in a casual setting or at least get information across. Um, like one of the easiest examples is like I went swimming today. So instead of saying today at the end, you say today went swimming, or that's kind of how it works. It's just like the order in which you state things is just it's all of that's like really turned around a lot, and that's the reason why like even now like Google Translate botches it up so many times that it can just kind of be a chore to just translate and understand exactly what that artist you're following is saying or something like that. Kind of the other issue that you'll run into too is like, while at least when characters are typed up, it's very easy to understand. If you do happen to follow a lot of Japanese artists, there's probably a good chance that they have like their own little comics that they do, and it's like handwritten. And sometimes handwritten kanji and like hiragana and katakana is like almost impossible to read, just depending on how bad their handwriting is too. So that's kind of like another difficulty that you'll come across. But one thing that I'm really happy to say is like I started learning Japanese, I would say of May of last year, like seriously studying it. And then since then, I've been very on and off with learning it. However, ever since March came up, I have been practicing Japanese every single day just to do my due diligence with the language and just actually put in more footwork to just help communicate with my friends better. Uh, the programs have gotten significantly better just within that 1 year time period. So I'll kind of go over some of the things that I've done for myself and like some of the things that I've looked into but I have not used yet. Um, but let's talk with the basics first. Obviously, if you're going to be communicating with anybody in Japanese and you don't know any Japanese yourself, you're going to want to use translating programs. And there's two things that you want to use. So I did just meme them, but first one that you want to have is actually Google Translate. So while it might sound weird that I'm recommending this, there's one like very big distinct reason, and it's actually because you can use this, which is this drawing tool. So let's say that like I wanted to draw a specific kanji and like I had no idea how to pronounce it. I can go ahead and do this. I haven't found any other. I'm pretty sure that there's other translating apps out there that do have this feature. This is the one that I immediately know to. And the other thing that's nice too is that if you want to see how it's pronounced, it will say how you pronounce it on the bottom. And of course, there's also the audio for it as well too. Which I just realized. Did this? Yeah, there you go. So that's very useful. The other one that you want, Deep L. Deep L is by and large the much better translator. So like if you need to copy and paste like large blocks of text, DeepL does a much better job of translating those into a usable form of English. So highly recommend using this. And the other thing that's really neat too is there's a plugin that you can download where it will go into Netflix and it will actually actively translate things for you. So like if you watch anime, it can have those translations and pause it and help you like learn and understand it too. So definitely if you have that, highly recommend this plugin so you can just learn even more through that. Not sure if it has extensions for YouTube as well, but if it does, then this would be a very good add-on to have. I'll definitely check into it more. If they do have YouTube things, I'll kind of go over my experience with it and ways that you can learn with that. So basically, these two are kind of like the fundamental things that you want to have when you're just like first getting into it so you can kind of see some of the sentence structure. Next thing that we'll talk about is phone apps. So obviously I had Google Translate on my phone. So when I was communicating with Rido, that was pretty much what I was using at first because that was the only thing I knew. And then, of course, I heard about the app that you guys probably know what I'm going to talk about left, which is going to be Duolinguo. So Duolinguo, when this first launched, this was absolute garbage for Japanese. It did not have hints to like help you understand the grammar. It would have like the sound outs, but like you just would not understand what the hell you were doing when you were using this app. Now the tutorials that they have, so basically when you click on it, you'll have these tips there. And this stuff explains things really, really nicely now. Not to mention when you have like the words there and whatnot, like it'll have the sentence there. So that way you can just kind of understand what's going on. So I'll show it off for a sec. I just need a sentence. Please give me a sentence. Actually, would this not? Maybe this actually won't give me a sentence. Let me check. So that's giving me an ad now. That's the other thing about Duolingo. So it is free to use, but you are going to get like ads in between like a lot of things. And that's kind of like the one shortcoming. Okay, so here I'll be able to show it. So it's like it'll have like the kanji there, and then it'll tell you it'll have the hiragana on the bottom. So it's like you can learn how the hiragana sounds and all that stuff. So it's just basic like recognition. There we go. Please give me a sentence. Nope. It's doing like everything in its power not to give you what I want to show you guys, which is really unfortunate. But basically, this is now a very competent program to use if you really want to learn the language. You know what? We're going to just put this thing to rest maybe if the next one doesn't have it. No. Please sentence. Okay. So you have the sentence there at the top, and you can hit this little blue button over here to just like resound it out again. And then of course you have like all your words at the bottom. So let's say I didn't know what these one words were. You can tap it there so that way it can tell you what it is. So on one hand, you might be like, oh, that kind of defeats the purpose. But you know, if it's your first time seeing the words and whatnot, then at least it's there to like help you out understand what each thing is. And then generally speaking, the tips that are there will help expand and help your understanding for that specific section. So overall, this is a really good app to use now to understand the basics. So when you're getting into it, the first thing I would recommend doing is focus on the Duolingo app. And what you want to do is you want to focus on learning like this whole first chapter. Just get them gold, get them perfect before you move on to the next one. So then that way it's like you have the very, very basics of reading Japanese down and the very basics of the sentence structure too. Because like the intros sort of do that for you. And when you get that down, that's when you can expand out to other learning programs. But like getting the hiragana, the katakana down first, and then the very basic sentence structures, Duolingo's really good at presenting that now. The other thing too that's really nice is they did add this whole chart here where it gives you like the pronunciations of all the hiragana and katakana. And if you guys aren't familiar with that terminology, think about it as basically the alphabet for Japanese, except like in manuscript and cursive. That's kind of the best way to describe it. But And they kind of have their own uses for conveying specific things too. So it's a lot more nuanced than just that. Um, so yeah, overall, that's kind of the introduction to Duolingo. And then after you get past like the basic stuff, you'll have intros, things for food, time, vacation related, positions, family. So you'll have like a very basic understanding of how to get around and how to ask for things and just do very, very, very basic conversations. I haven't gone through the whole way through. There's like a significant amount of chapters. I think it's 7 in total. Okay, so 6 chapters in total with a final test of number 7. And I think like once you get through all of that, you should be able to do a pretty good amount of stuff with this. The next one that I'll recommend, just because I have a feeling it probably will come up again, is going to be this one. This isn't one that many people have heard of. It's called Transparent Language. The main reason why I want to mention this is I got this from a Humble Bundle, and this came with like 12 different other languages. And the Humble Bundle was like $20. What you get is a 1-year subscription to learning the specific languages themselves. But this was a nice one. Basically, you can learn the typing of the actual hiragana and katakana itself. It explains the grammar some more, so this was a very helpful aid. And the other thing too is like if you do Duolingo and this at the same time, you're kind of learning the same things at the same time, except more in the context of conversations to just kind of help you out understand on how this is used in a real practical sense. And it also does use your microphone too. You can enable that or disable that, but it's like if you want to learn how to speak it, it does have voice recognition capabilities. However, it's not perfect. Just because the voice recognition is not always great. Sometimes like it just completely misses the mark every single time. It doesn't say it sounds remotely like it, even if you do. So that's kind of the one thing where this thing fails, but it always like forces you to refresh your vocabulary and all that stuff. The main reason why I haven't done this yet is I finished this whole thing. I finished the whole path like a month ago. Actually, I think it was like a month and a half ago. So I haven't really reopened this to refresh it just because a lot of the words are the same, but I'm actually planning on going through this pretty soon. Just because I know there were some words in this that I haven't really used in a while, so it'll be useful for that front to just kind of refresh my memory. And the thing too is if this language bundle does come up again, for the low entry point and the fact that you'll get other languages as well, I would recommend this just as a companion piece to Duolingo. Next one I'm going to talk about, which I actually should have mentioned earlier, is an audiobook. So the cool thing is if you join audible.com, like there's so many different like free promotions for this that as long as you don't have an account, you're going to be able to take advantage of this. Is the one where it's like you join up, you create an Audible account and you get like one free audiobook, but I think you need to specifically use a promotion for that. You can download this one thing called Pimsleur. That's how you spell Pimsleur. And make sure you download the entirety of units 1 through 30 because like you can download like individual sections, and that's a huge waste where the 1 through 30 is basically like an entire textbook. And what this does is obviously it's an audiobook, so you're not going to learn to read. And that's kind of the one issue by using this by itself. However, you are going to be able to speak and you are going to be able to get around and identify things, which is very, very important. So when I first went to Japan, I was going through this and I didn't get through the entire way. And then when I was going again in August, I was going through it some more to just kind of refresh myself and get my point to a part where I was way more competent in speaking. And the thing is, because like you don't have any visuals or anything like that, it just entirely relies on your memory in order to carry out these conversations. Obviously, you repeat phrases, you make sure you sound it out correctly, and they even goes through slowly so you can do each syllable and connect the entire thing. And that's really useful. And also, instead of having like the conversations where it goes one at a time and it just tells you what to say, as like Transparent does, you know, you're on a time limit. So you really need to think ahead of time to think about, okay, what do I need to say? How do I convey the right things? And how do I say it? And then it will repeat the phrase afterwards just so you can confirm or if you got it correct or not. So for speaking wise, Pimsleur is the absolute best thing that you can do. So if you don't have an Audible account, I highly recommend just getting that just because it's a really cheap way to get a lot of knowledge for free. And it's very just immediately applicable if you're ever just intending of visiting in Japan. or if you're actually planning on even just speaking on the phone, or I would say even over the internet. Because like when you're speaking these things and you see the kanji and the hiragana come up for it in these apps and all that stuff, you'll have the recognition immediately of what you need to do and how you can use that word. So definitely, I can't recommend Pimsleur enough for any language that you're trying to learn to speak. So after all of those programs, one that I just had my attention brought to, I think is honestly one of the absolute best ones that I've seen, and one that I don't think you can go without of if you are planning on learning Japanese. So there is a web component to it, but I don't think it's nearly as good as the app. It's called Wanikani. So this is what it looks like. So Wanikani is a kanji learning Japanese app program. So basically, you can learn to understand kanji, which is one of the most absolute difficult things in the entire world because of how weird and obtuse it is. And this program breaks it down and makes it extremely easy to understand. So you can, of course, obviously learn it on the desktop like this, and it's just a website, completely free. Don't have to pay anything, at least as of right now. I don't know if that changes in the future. But like it helps you just understand how this whole system works in a very easy to understand way. They even use like visual metaphors of how these things are. Like one I remember is the kanji for up, which is generally ue. Trying to see if they show it off here. I don't think it's not listed here. Or let's look at below. So this one is shita, which is down, below, just anything that's underneath. And the way that they describe it is you have the ground, which is the line, which is the name of the radial, and then below it you have the toe. So they say imagine that your toe is below the ground and it's hitting a car, because like the way that you would pronounce like one of the variations of it is ka. So it's like your foot is going below the ground and it's hitting a car. And I always remember that, and it's like that's why I always remember it's ka, but obviously I know the other context where it is shita, which means underneath and all that stuff. So it's things like that that make this a very, very powerful tool to use. And not to mention, you're going to see all these like kanji and radials come up all the time whenever you're reading Japanese, because kanji is just ingrained into the language itself. Like even when I'm reading just like online comics and things like that, things that I could not read before, and I go back and I look at them again, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I recognize that. I recognize those two radials that create this meaning and this symbolism now. And, maybe I learned what the actual kanji meant and all that stuff. So, for just learning vocabulary and just expanding your just knowledge of Japanese and how it works, Wanikani is an absolute must. When it's on the app, it looks like this turtle thing there in the middle, which is weird because it's called Surukame. But when you go in it, it's Wanikani. Which I don't know why it has the different names and all that stuff, but that's it. Just go into the App Store, look it up, you'll find it. And then after you get past that initial step of understanding hiragana and katakana with Duolinguo, so that way it's like you just know how to say it and all that stuff, you know how to type it out, and with transparent and all that stuff, then you do Wanikani. Wanikani is not what you want to start off with. Wanikani you want to use after you have a very basic understanding of hiragana, katakana, and the sentence structure. Then Wanikani. Okay. Obviously, the other thing too is to help assist you with all of this. Watch anime. If you can do subtitles, that'd be great too. Also, reading manga, I think, is just probably the better way to do it. Just because it's like you can read all these things, you can go back, put it into DeepL, put it into Google Translate, and really get like the full context of everything. Also, you can play certain video games. I haven't done this yet, but like I've heard Dragon Quest in particular is really, really good if you want to learn Japanese, because like it's just they make it really, really easy to read. Like for example, like kanji might be pronounced very differently depending on what the interpretation is. And there's a lot of examples that I've seen more recently where they'll have like the hiragana and katakana on the side of the kanji, so that way you can read out how it's supposed to sound like just instantaneously there. And it'll just help you translate things a lot easier if you need to do so. So those would definitely be the methods I would recommend. Obviously, if you have any friends that can speak Japanese, that is by and large going to be the absolute best practice that you can get. You can practice just chatting with them, obviously speaking Japanese with them too, just like over the phone and things like that. And, just anything to just like constantly reinforce yourself and ingrain yourself in the language and the culture of it is going to always be the best way. Like if you could spend a month in Japan, that will easily be one of the best ways if you're actively studying to learn it, because you'll have to go out, read menus, read the train timetables, and all those other things. Of course, when you're there, they'll have a lot of English too, but that's always going to be the best way to do it. As much as you can engross yourself and force your mind to think in Japanese, the easier it is going to be to learn it. And that just kind of rings true with everything. But yeah, those are the examples and those are the methods that I am using personally to learn Japanese at the moment. I'd still very much consider myself at a very grade school level of Japanese. It's not very complex or anything like that, but I'm doing everything I can to learn bit by bit. Like, I've got hiragana, I've got katakana down, I've got the sentence structures, the past tense, present tense, using adverbs and all that stuff. It's just expanding my vocabulary now, getting used to using it and understanding the contexts to use certain things, and just learning a lot of honorifics just because that's very ingrained into the culture of everything. So, with that said, I hope you guys have found this helpful at all. Definitely I'm going to be talking more about Japan in the future. I definitely want to give traveling tips and things like that. And just definitely part of my Smash stories will be my vlogs of my time in Japan, just because Smash was very much a big part of the reason why I went there. And, there's just a lot of things to talk about. It's a very interesting place to visit, very fun place to visit. A lot of really pleasant things too. There's like a lot of weird things as well. So let me know down below. Did this guys get you interested in Japanese? Did this help you understand things? Do you have any questions about any of these programs? I'd be more than happy to elaborate on all these topics to just kind of get you guys' foot in the door and everything. Just because, learning a language is good for you. It's good for your mental health. If you don't want to go down the path of, more likely to develop things like schizophrenia and things like that. It's good to keep your mind working, and learning a language is obviously going to be just one of the best things that you can do for yourself. So with that said, hope you guys found this useful. Hope you found it helpful. And until the next one, take care of yourselves.